Hey guys, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are talking about how I rate books. On my channel at least once before. I don't know exactly how long it has been, but it's a brand new year, so I figured let's go through and talk about how I actually rate my books. I do think my rating system has slightly changed a little bit because I am using more half-star ratings than I used to in the past, but I do feel like my majority of ratings are on the full stars, 1 through 5, because that's what Goodreads allows us to use. I would love to use more half-star ratings actually on Goodreads, but obviously the best I can really do is rate it, and then in my review on Goodreads say whether it is a half-star rating or not. One thing I will say just right off the bat, I do round up all of my half-star ratings. Partially it is because I feel like most of the books that I rate as a half-star are closer to the actual like next rating up versus a rating down. So like if I rate something 3.5 stars, it will show up on Goodreads as a 4, but also I just can't get it out of my brain from math. If you're rounding up in math and something is 5 or higher, you round up. And I know it's a half star, like I don't use any quarter stars or 3/4 stars. And so everything is either a full number or a half star, but that 0.5 just always gets me, and so I round up every single time. But besides that, ratings are obviously very subjective. There are people that rate purely based on like analyzing the text. Are the characters well developed? Is the writing well done? Grammar, that kind of thing. And while I do feel like some of those things impact how I feel about a book, I purely rate based on my enjoyment. If I'm really sucked into a story, I give it a higher rating than if I'm not into a story. And while some elements of why I like or dislike a book could be considered objective, because it's not really going to change just based on your personal preferences if something is well done or not, if there's typos or not, I'm not actually judging a book objectively. I'm judging it based on my emotions and how much I'm able to connect. And yes, there are times when bits and pieces of a book take me out of the story. And so I will talk about characters and writing style and this kind of thing, but for me, I really only notice certain things like that depending on how well I am able to go into a story or take out of a story. I read purely for pleasure, to escape the real world. I've always read that way, except for when we had to analyze things in high school, and I just really don't like having to be objective in my ratings, in the fact that like, if I like a book, I like a book. I will give you reasons why I like something or don't like something, but that's just me. So in order to stop rambling about this, let's actually get into the actual ratings. So obviously the first rating that we have is a 5-star. According to Goodreads, this is the highest we can go, and I actually do like a 5-star rating system, except for I do wish we had half stars. And for me, a 5-star book is usually something that I am just enamored with. I am sucked into the world. I love the characters. Usually it is also something that makes me very emotional in some way. Either that's like laughing or crying or just feeling things. That for me is a 5 stars. I just feel it in my soul, and I know that that's what that is. One example would be Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This was my favorite book of 2020. I just absolutely loved the writing style. It was a very easy book to get into, but more than that, I loved our characters. Yadriel specifically was one of my favorite characters. I felt for him so much. I actually did tear up a couple times with this book. It was just so hitting to me. It does have some trigger warnings that go along with this because of the fact that our main character of Yadriel is trans, and there are times when he is misgendered and dead named because his family does not see him as a man. And so there are definite hard-hitting topics with this, but I absolutely loved it. Aiden Thomas is officially an auto-buy author for me after one book because I loved this book so much. And one thing that I will say is I feel like I am less coherent in my reviews on really, really good books, especially like my 5-star favorites, because it is more of a visceral reaction for me. It is something that I feel more than analyze. I don't feel like I need to analyze anything about it, so my reviews on my channel will usually be more well thought out and more well articulated, in my personal opinion, when we get to some of the lower ratings, because I usually can talk about why I don't like certain aspects more than why I liked something. Now, another example of a 5-star rating would actually be books 2 and 3 in the All for the Game series. So book 2 is The Raven King and book 3 is The King's Men, and objectively, I know these aren't necessarily the best books. These come with tons of trigger warnings. There are definite aspects here that could be problematic, that are problematic, but again, I connected to the characters and the events happening in the book so much. It gave me so many feelings that I've read these at least, I think, 3 times each. Like, I just devoured this series. I haven't read it for a couple years. I might have to reread it again this year, who knows, but I do understand these are not the best books. But I still gave them 5 stars each and every single time I read it. I did not give the first book 5 stars because there were some things in there that I did not like as much. I think that's a 4-star read, but these are 5 stars in my rating system because I feel them so much. Now we're gonna move into, I guess, 4.5 stars. Again, like I said, I don't use half stars as much. However, I have been using them more in the last year, year and a half. And so these to me are books that are very, very near a perfect 5 stars, but there was just something I'm not feeling. There is just not that thing, that emotional thing that pushes me over the edge for it. So these on Goodreads will be rated as a 5-star. It just, for whatever reason, did not have that oomph to push it over. So an example for that will be Secret Santa by Andrew Schaefer. This is a comedy horror set around Christmas time, and I really did love this book. It just did not have that oomph. I don't even know how to really describe it, but I really did love this book. I love the sort of horror elements, even though they're not like super spooky, gory horror elements, because it is a comedy horror. We have a lot of the comedic stuff as well. I love the fact that it was set in the 80s. I loved our main character of Lucy. I love the setting of the publishing world. There was so much to love about this, and on Goodreads it's rated a 5. But for me personally, it's a 4.5, just because I don't have that thing that I'm looking for, or that I guess I'm not even necessarily looking for it, because I just want it to happen organically. There was just not that thing that happens for me with 5s. Another good example, and this will be a spoiler for my January wrap up because I read it this month, but another good example is going to be Qualityland by Mark Uwe Kling. This was a buddy read that I did in January, and again, I absolutely love this book. This is a sarcastic satire sort of thing where if Amazon took over our world, what it would sort of be like. And this is a novel that was originally in German, translated into English for my copy here. And so the main setting that we have is actually in Germany, but there are other Qualitylands out there, as in other countries. And there's a lot of commentary in here, especially that I felt being an American. I don't know what that necessarily says about either me or the author or what that is, because there are some references in here that definitely show you that this is set in Germany, but then there are certain things in here where you feel it as an American. So the reason this is not a 5 and only a 4.5, because I really did love a lot of aspects to this book. There were certain chapters where the funny factor, the sarcasm, the satire nature just took a little bit too bit of a dark turn. And what I mean for that is this book in general is sort of bleak because of the fact that it is sort of like a near future example of like what could happen in the world in very developed countries with politics and jobs and communities. But while a lot of it is dark, there were times where there wasn't enough funny bits or things that you could tell the author was trying to make fun of, and instead it was just taking things that happen in our current day and making it extra dark. It was very almost depressing in a way. So while there was a lot of things that I did love about this book, there were just certain aspects where I read stuff and I was like, oh, is that what we're doing? Like, my heart would sink into my stomach. Like, it was just, there were certain aspects. It was just like that a little bit. So again, it gave me an emotional, a visceral reaction, but not in the way that the rest of the book did. So again, really, really loved. 4.5. The next rating is another full star rating. This is gonna be 4 stars. For me, 4 stars are like really, really good. There could be some things that I did not feel as much, some things that could have taken me out of the story based on characters or writing, but overall, I did still really enjoy my reading time. I either want to continue with the series, if it is a series, or I have a possibility of rereading the books eventually down the road. Anything that I rate at least a 4 and up, I would recommend to almost anybody. It just had something that wasn't quite there for me, but usually in the actual content or the makeup of the book. So one of the examples is going to be Seven Devils by Laura Lamb and Elizabeth May. This was another buddy read that I actually read, I believe, in November of 2020. And again, there was so much to love about this book. It was very character driven. It's a feminist sci-fi. Like, most of our main characters are female, with like our token male character thrown in every so often. And it is so character driven. I absolutely loved the characters, but one thing that it would do quite often actually is we would get into our current timeline, into an actiony scene with our characters, and then it would stop and go to a flashback. And those flashbacks would give us good context for these characters, but it would take me out of the action every single time. And that is just something that I don't really enjoy. But overall, still a really good book. I want to read the next one that's coming out because I think it's a duology, so I think that's also going to be our finale. But like, I do want to continue in this world. I want to own this book, but there were just certain things that I didn't like as much. Another example is A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney. This is a dark Alice in Wonderland retelling, like almost Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Alice in Wonderland. And again, I really enjoyed it, want to continue on with the series. However, there was just some things that were not quite right for me, and I feel like mostly here, it's the world building. We had a lot of questions that did not get answered, and I'm hoping it gets better as we go through the series because of the fact that, like, by the end of this book, it sort of ended on a cliffhanger. I needed to know things. I needed to continue. But because I had those questions as I went through, I could not give this a higher rating because I have questions that need to be answered. Then we have 3.5 stars. So for me, these are still good. They probably have more bad things than a 4-star. I will possibly want to reread them again or continue on with the series, but we're getting more into a gray area with that. One example is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare. I read this last year, and while I did really like some of these slasher horror elements here, we did not really have any character development. I did not feel a connection to any character. I liked a lot of stuff that was happening. I loved the ending, but an ending is not going to save the book for me. So I did have quite a few issues here, but it's right in the middle of a 4 and a 3 for me because I still liked a lot of aspects. Moving down to 3 stars, this is my it was fine sort of rating. It's not good, it's not bad. I know a lot of people probably save this rating for 2.5 stars, but again, like I said before, I wasn't fully doing half-star ratings before the last like year or year and a half. So for me, a 3 is basically middle of the road. There's probably some good things, but there's also probably some things I really did not enjoy, and I'm probably never going to think about this book really in the future. I'm not going to want to continue with the series. I'm not probably going to want to reread. One that I rated 3 stars is Circe by Madeline Miller. This, I feel like partially is because I was so let down by this book. I absolutely loved The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I was expecting a little bit more like that, I think, is what the actual issue was. We have Circe as a character, and she is actually a pretty good character. However, the book felt very long because Circe as a character is sort of banished to an island, and she is stuck there, and then things happen around her. And one thing that I really liked about The Song of Achilles is we take Greek mythology and like the Trojan War aspect stuff, and she expanded upon it, gave us more about Achilles and Patroclus, and like gave me more characterization and like how they were when they grew up, things that we wouldn't necessarily see in other retellings or other mythology stuff for that. However, with Circe, I feel like everything that happened around her was just sort of being told to us in the same way that I had been told many, many times before. I know a lot about Greek mythology. I don't know if it's just a US thing or where I grew up with school, but we did mythology lessons, and when I say mythology lessons, it's almost exclusively Greek mythology lessons in multiple grade levels. So a lot of the stories I have read multiple times, and I did not get more. So while I did like Circe as a character, I didn't necessarily get the expansion that I was expecting based on her previous book. Now we have 2.5 stars. So if 3 is an okay book, it's a fine book, there's nothing great or horrible about it, a 2-star rating is getting down there. For me, 2.5 is something that I don't necessarily hate, but I also don't think it's good. It's really hard to explain. And because it's very hard to explain, I don't think I've really rated anything at 2.5 star except for Midnight Sun. This, with my nostalgia for Twilight, I did really want to like this. I'm going to also say that there are very problematic things in the Twilight world, especially with the way that Stephenie Meyer wrote about the Quileute people, and I will leave a link down below so you can help fund them. They're trying to get out of a tsunami zone, and when I purchased this book, I did fund that as well. I plan on doing that anytime I purchase anything that is Stephenie Meyer related. I got off on a tangent a little bit, but you guys do need to know that. So I gave this 2.5 stars. This is Twilight from Edward's point of view. I read the original book when it was on her website years ago, and when I say the original book, the first like what, half that she wrote, whatever it was. So there was a lot of this that was not necessarily new to me, but also he is so long-winded that he was saying stuff that I didn't care about. It was sort of boring. However, we did get a lot about Jasper and Emmett and Alice and how certain powers and things worked that I really did enjoy as well. So this is tinted a little bit by my nostalgia, but I did not necessarily like this book, but I also did not hate this book. However, it is not a 3 stars, it was fine book. There are aspects that are not good about this, and this is a very polarizing book. This is a very confusing book for me. So it is a 2.5 because of the fact that like I could not say I hated it and give it a 2 if I'm being true to myself, but I can completely understand why other people give it 2 or even 1 stars. Then we're going down to 2 stars. This is for a bad book. I hated it. There were so many things I did not like about it. However, I finished reading it. So one example of this would be The Ghost Tree by Christina Henry. I talked about this in my worst books of 2020 video because I did not like this book. This book was sort of boring in the fact that it's a horror, but we didn't really get too much horror from it until the last like 10%, but also we have multiple points of view, and almost every single point of view was not a good person. I could not find much redeemable about almost anybody. One specifically that I could not stand was an elderly lady who is a racist, and we had multiple points of view in her head of her being racist, and not just like blatantly being racist, like you can see her being racist to these people, but like almost all of her thoughts were racist thoughts toward this group of people, and I could not stand it. We also had some very questionable views on a teenager wanting to lose her virginity to an adult and then eventually doing that, so we had statutory rape. There was a lot in here that I feel like was trying to be horror, but it was mostly just like things that were trying to be used for shock value, and it did not work because it was just very uncomfortable and problematic. Then we have a 1.5 star. I don't think I've ever actually given a 1.5 star. I could not find anything anywhere. And then the last one we have is a 1 star. These I save for books that I DNF, and I don't just mean a DNF where I'm just like, I'm not really into it today, this isn't for me, whatever that is. Or, you know, I only got 20 pages in, but I can't stand something. No. These are for DNFs where I feel like I've read enough. Usually like what, at least 50 pages, an hour, something where I've given enough of my time that I know for a fact I will not like this book. I do not want to continue because there are things I cannot stand. You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. I know a lot of people loved this book. I also know some people that actually finished it but also did not like it. I DNF'd it. I can't remember exactly what percentage. I do have a review on Goodreads, but I did not like this book. I showed up expecting some sort of like enemies to lovers type of romance, a second chance romance, something like that. But instead, our main girl character, I don't remember any of their names, by the way. I have tried to block it out as much as possible. I could not stand her. She was the worst person. She was lying to her fiance and then getting offended when he called her out on the lying. I didn't even get to too much of him because like I didn't really care about him because I hated her so much, if that makes any sense. And I can understand enemies to lovers. I can understand second chance romance, but the fact that they were still engaged and hating each other, and there was so much like miscommunication and fighting and like all this kind of stuff, like that is not a healthy romance, and I did not want to read it because to me that is not a romance. I completely DNF'd it because no matter if I would have liked it later on or it gets better, if I give a certain amount of my time and I'm really not enjoying myself, I'm not going to continue. The ending of a book cannot save an entire book for me. That is just me. Like if your book doesn't get good until the last like quarter or less sometimes, it is not going to affect my rating. It'll still be a bad rating. So I did DNF. I gave it 1 star. I don't fully talk about those like things in my worst of the year because I did not give it my entire attention for like the whole book, but it was not good. And then after all that ranting, I didn't realize I was gonna get so ranty today. That's it. That is my entire rating system from a 5-star down to a 1. Like I said, I do half stars. I round up on Goodreads, and I do feel like I give more half stars in the 3.5, 4.5 range than I do on the lower end of the scale because I feel like it's a little bit closer at the top. I need a little bit more nuance in my ratings, whereas near the bottom with a 3 to a 2 to a 1, those are very solid ratings for me, and if you're in there, I know you're in there. If you guys liked this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more videos. I do have videos up Mondays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye!